and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurship Uncovered, the top 3 things you ought to know. I'm Gabby, and I will be facilitating and joining in this discussion with Nick Mannerino, CPA and controller here at Mod Ventures. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Mod Ventures. Mod is a virtual accounting and advisory service firm, and we help entrepreneurs organize, create, and predict their financial futures. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited about talking about client accounting services and what that means to you. And first, before we get started, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. And thanks for having me, Gabby. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here and kind of talk with our audience. So I have 15 years experience in public accounting in the industry. Currently working, as Gabby said, or as you said, outsourced controllership in a CAS environment. So we have involvement in AR and AP. We got the bookkeeping. We have the payroll. We have income tax. I'm from the Pittsburgh area myself. I work virtually for Mod, which is one of the reasons that led me here. That was one of those. It was wasn't looking for remote only at the time, but it kind of makes sense, and I like it a lot. Wife and 2 boys, and I'm interested in local history, Civil War history, stuff like that. Railroad fan, and I model railroads and actual life-size railroads. And I also enjoy faith-based reading and enrichment. So, so we kind of talked a little bit about what led me here, right? I kind of went into that. Can I talk to that a bit?
I would love to hear about what led you to Mod Ventures.
So I already mentioned one, the virtual environment. A couple other reasons I would say that I could see even during some of my initial interviews and just learning about the company that there were processes and procedures in place, that there was a plan at Mod Ventures, and that was obvious to me and clear to me right away. And I see that now more, being in the the daily activities and helping oversee my workload and servicing my clients. I can see the value of those processes and procedures every day. It leads to a more efficient workday, right? There's fewer hours. That was one thing that we talked about. That I can remember talking. I think it was either Gab. I think it was with you and Larissa.
Yeah.
That the hours are much more reasonable than a traditional accounting firm or some of my background, some prior employment. And I think the reason that that's made possible is because of those procedures, those processes. How do we go about planning our workload, or forward looking, being proactive? What do we know that's coming, and planning for that instead of being reactive, right? So that I could sense right away, and I can see the results of that kind of that setup now that I've been with Mod.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that it's very beneficial for not only our staff, but also our clients when we have things, scheduled out and everybody knows what's expected and when. And so that's a big part of client advisory services. Very, very different if you come from maybe a more traditional firm where it is very reactive. It's because it hasn't been necessarily planned out. A lot of thought hasn't been put into that system or that processes. So
right, and that's part of my background, was that more of a traditional approach. And that's one thing that I'm sure we'll get into, is kind of that change in the industry with that kind of new dynamic. And the CAS model really being its own service line. It is really separate from your day-to-day bookkeeping or what have you. So, right. Yep.
Well, great. I'm glad that you're here to share the differences and kind of how it makes a big difference in our clients' lives as well. Yep. So give me a little bit more background of what CAS is versus what it is not. I would love to hear that from you.
So I would say, let me do a very overly simplification of it, I guess, up front and try to elaborate it. And then you can fill in the gaps, Gabby. If I had to pick, a very high level, I would say traditional accounting, traditional bookkeeping is retroactive, right? After the fact.
Mhm.
Client advisory services, CAS environment, it's proactive, it's forward, it's advisory. To
Mhm.
me, if you boiled it down, if you had to, put it into 5 words or the 20 words that I used to do it, that's it. It's the perspective, right?
Yeah,
So CAS, these services, right? So they can include and generally do include your general accounting, right? Your back office work, the payrolls, the financial closes, the reporting, right? All that traditional work, which is, we're not here. I'm not here to lessen the importance of that information or those services, right? But CAS is also, these outsourced, these controllership, these virtual CFO services, right? They're the
roles are
uh,
different.
right, right. The advisory piece of it, really, like it's building on that base population, the financial data, right? Just a plain black and white data, and it's not, here's your close. Let's talk in 3 or 4 weeks. We'll do it again. See you in
Right,
3 or 4 weeks. It's
right.
a much, and we'll talk about that. It's a closer relationship with the clients, which snowballs into better service.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So the best way that I can explain it is, in traditional framework, you drop off your documentation. Um, you don't see it again probably for another 4 to 6 weeks. And so
Yep.
that biggest difference is that we actually have the information already at our fingertips, and we can provide that,
Mm,
um, you know, turnaround as far as information and the support of decision making very, very quickly. And so because it's not, I'm dropping this off and it's going to be good through December, it's for the year end for December, it's good for the last 2 weeks. We're up to
right.
date, we're doing all those things so that we're not historically looking at data. um,
Mhm.
or actually have a very closer relationship with what's happening now. And so I really think that that's the premise of controllership services. And then that leads to that virtual CFO, the ability to provide those types of services going
Right.
forward. Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Well, great. So I think you gave us a really good overview, but I want you to get into a little bit deeper what that means specifically. And here you have communication. So tell me, how client advisory service is different in communication versus maybe the historical.
Sure. Sure. And that's actually kind of started into that, right? When in our last talking point. So today, not just today, it's been a trend, right? It's a growing trend where, like I said, it's not just a month end close situation, right? And Gabby, you alluded to it. It's a continual relationship.
Mhm.
It's a situation. Let's pool work into the end of a month so that we can focus on some decision making at the beginning of the month instead of a reactionary, you know, let's, you know, let's track down these statements that we need and ask the questions at that point. Well, if you're always kind of chasing that data, all of a sudden you're just in that same position a month from now, right? So having that level of communication, like a close relationship, I think I said snowball earlier, if I remember, having that familiarity, both my client with myself and with my team, right? With what we can do, what we can service, what we're knowledgeable in, what's our niche, our familiarities. and then vice versa, right? My familiarity with that client, right? I've had so many conversations with my clients that, right, we met for this specific topic, but we discovered just by talking, right, face to face, albeit virtually, just by talking, wow, is that okay? Have you ever thought about this, right? Or how about this program? Completely not an accounting program, but some other clients that I work with, they use this, or this is their practice. Just having those types of recurring conversations doesn't always have to be video, right? But just having that line open,
Mhm.
it fosters better service, better insight, and obviously the financials. At the end of the day, that's the base deliverable.
Right.
But then the value on top of that, the familiarity, I think adds a lot more value to the relationship.
Right. Right.
Uh,
So what is your favorite part about what you do as a controller at Mod?
I would say I can. I've seen myself become, well, still working on this, right? I've never become it, but I can see the nature of my work shift. Let's say it that way.
Mhm.
Uh, Away from just a service provider, right?
Mhm.
More to a trusted advisor. And I like that. I enjoy that, right? So there's all various members of the team, right? We all have different, pieces of what we contribute, for whether it's on the client side, and maybe they're somebody in their accounting or bookkeeping group. We kind of integrate with them, our own team here at Mod. I enjoy my role in doing just that. Like I said, I'm not here just to rubber stamp and
Right.
sign those financials. I'd say the other piece that I've really enjoyed, one of my favorite parts is just learning, the operations, the practices of my, various clients, right, customers. So problem solving that comes along with that, right?
Yeah.
The exposure to that variety that comes along with that I've continued to enjoy, and that's part of the reason I've enjoyed like the public aspect of it.
Mhm. Yeah. The accounting side of it is interesting. Obviously we're experts in accounting, CPAs, both of us.
Mhm.
So we understand the technical part of our work,
Right.
but the getting into the operational type of what we do is that bigger difference, I would say. When you go from, traditional, where you're just really ticking and tying out figures on
Mhm.
financials, and you alluded to that, you're just rubber stamping things. Now you're actually getting into the nitty gritty of operational accounting. And I think that that's the beauty of client advisory service, where we come with that technical knowledge and skill set,
Mhm.
but we are able to dive deeper into the operational side and really understand how things are affecting the financials. So
Right.
I love that. I think it is a major difference between the historical type of accounting versus client advisory
Yep.
service.
Hmm.
So earlier you mentioned the being able to be more proactive. So, what are some of your insights on um, how being proactive has really helped our clients um, since being here? It's almost been what, 8 months, 9 months now?
It's almost a year. Yeah.
Almost a
Now.
year.
Yeah. It's March. Yeah.
Time
March of this year.
flies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So almost a year. So tell me about proactivity and what that really has meant for our clients.
Right. And yeah, so we talked about this. I mentioned that to you previously. That notion of uh, anticipating either known deadlines or known deliverables, or what could be unknown, right? At least having, whether it's personal bandwidth or a mechanism or some type of plan to address things that pop up. Obviously nobody likes surprises. I I like when my days structure, but it never ever goes like that anyway, right? So, and I know, organizations, companies, businesses are the same way, right? I have conversations with folks all the time. Um, So whether, like I said, whether that's an approach to a compliance deadline, I have this tax return, it's due on this date, I need these financials by this date. You can see there some of the CAS environment overlaps with your traditional bookkeeping. That's an example. But other instances like which the value of a CAS model, I think, starts to really show through are things like, okay, cash flow needs. Right. Okay. A system can prevent or can produce a cash flow statement. Okay, that's a static report. Or what are my needs? What's the business's needs? What are my clients' needs? We have those conversations. Whether it's in the immediate term, am I going to be able to keep the lights on? Am I going to pay the bills? Can I meet payroll?
Right.
Or from a midterm to longer term, like a forecasting situation.
Yeah.
Can we take on this acquisition or this special project that might need a little more cash flow? Do we need to have like a funding mechanism? Do we need to explore something like that? That I think I can see the benefit, that the emphasis that CAS demands is a proactive approach. And those are the topics that being proactive can help you deliver value for our clients. And I've seen that in my own work.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think you're in a much better place as a business owner if you can create your own future. And that's why, we're so much about creating and predicting that future. It's just so important to your financial well-being, your emotional well-being.
Yeah, it's not just black and white. These are
No.
persons. These are
Yeah.
it's a job, or this is their business, or this is their
Mhm.
means of support. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so, if you can provide some stability in a business and really help them understand, where they're going, what's happening, and, you know, is it stressful to know your numbers? Well, sometimes it is stressful because then you got to do something about it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you're getting the benefit of being able to do something about it prior to it happening. So I've seen so many people be blindsided. I mean, myself, I've been blindsided before. It's typical in 20 years of business to have something jump up and you're not like, well, where did that come from?
Right. Things happen. Yeah.
Things do
There
happen.
are unavoidable things. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was a really, really great example of something happening, across everybody. In those businesses that were able to really, plan for, or at least have, let's say 10 to 30% of their cash flow set aside, that they have a savings account for things, were a little bit better off than those that were living, essentially paycheck to paycheck. So
Right.
being able to be proactive definitely allows you to think more about the future. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think this is a big, big part of CAS. Um, so the kind of last thing, but I'm sure there's going to be so much more conversation, even inclusive of this
Yeah.
slide, but tell us what your thoughts were on the insights around CAS.
So when I kind of organized my thoughts ahead of time, it was purposely done in this order in my mind. So if you look at our first 2 points, communication,
Mm-hmm.
good communication, effective communication, timely communication. And then with proactivity, what's the result of those two notions? To me, it's having insightful advice or advisory services. Right. So, and I even put it here on the side, the basic bookkeeping, like we said, we talked about it already. That's the basic need, the most basic need, right? But some of the insights that could be gleaned out of the conversations that we're having, the closer conversations, the more frequent conversations, they looking ahead, being proactive, whether it's financial or compliance deadlines. Either way, having that familiarity with our clients helps me to deliver more insightful advice to my clients. That is the crux. That is the purpose for a CAS model,
Mhm.
right? That the whole premise is based on that additional value, that guidance, that industry expertise, right? And a piece of those insights that can be available and what are available at Mod and that we can make available to our customers, to our clients is, what do we see trends? Do we see trends in, your, dear client, your specific industry in your region for your size, right?
Mhm.
What are my metrics? What are the opportunities and threats that I have, right? A SWOT analysis, or, if you will, for, at that level. What kind of factors are out there? Obviously, there's financial, but there's non-financial too. There's headcount, there's customer factors, there's industry-wide data
Mhm.
that all are going to affect my business, my organization, my operations.
Right.
Having a view of all that data from various different points, again, I think adds value to the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give me an example of maybe an opportunity that you had to um do a little, deeper diving with this type of trend analysis, and, any insights that you're able to really pull out for them?
Right. So I think one example we can look at was, one of our systems, it takes your financial data, right, from QuickBooks or whatever system you have, and then it marries it with industry data, right? I can say, okay, show me in this region, which other companies in this industry, in this region for this size, what's what are some of their primary ratios, or what are their, revenue per employee, per head count, right?
Mhm.
Should I be here versus here? One topic, or one specific example I have in mind was receivables for one of my clients. We were looking through a report, kind of generated this report compared to some industry metrics, and receivables were very high.
Mhm.
And if you're just looking at that on your own, right, there's nothing wrong just in isolation. When I look at my balance sheet, I'm oversimplifying this,
Yeah.
nothing tells me on that balance sheet that there's something to look deeper into based on that balance. It ties to my AR aging. That's where traditional accounting stops.
Right.
I've collected everything. I know what to write off. Yes, this matches my other receivable, my collection software. Go to next month. That's the difference. That's traditional accounting, right? So with this, in this situation I'm discussing here, it started the conversation rolling. Okay, what is in that number? And the client knows even more than I know, right? Because they do, that is their work. So
Mhm.
it started a conversation and said, okay, let's look at this a little more. What are some of the contributing factors? What is any of it avoidable? Is it something we can work on? What are the various factors? So that's the kind of next level that I like to provide, and the solutions that we have can provide in, again, in a CAS environment.
Yeah. I love that you said that alone that number doesn't look bad, right? You have no idea what you can compare it to previous years, but if previous years was exactly as, was the same, and they had the same policies and procedures for years and years and years, you're not going to notice that there's
Right.
been a change in the business. But when you put it up against another industry, um
Peers, right. Yep.
yeah, peers in their industry, then you can really say, wow, there's something wrong here, and what do we need to do to fix this
Mhm.
internally and operationally? So I love that.
It's
It's
a
such a great
much wider view. Yep.
Yeah, it's such a great example of why industry specific and doing pure comparison really, really can help
Mhm.
your business.
Mhm.
Very exciting things. Um, so we are bumping up against our deadline here, as far as we like to make this short and sweet but valuable. So I hope that this is a really great informational things so that you can really, as the public in general can really understand what the difference is between, a typical accounting or traditional accounting type of processes versus what client advisory services is. And you did a super job, Nick, in explaining those things and the value that we bring and work with our clients every single day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, we could probably do another round. I'd love to, if you ever have me back, we can talk more and
for sure. Yeah.
Surface, so.
I know this was just like the tip of the iceberg. I feel like there's so much more that we could talk about, but this is really our passion and our life's work, and what we really desire to do is just dig in and really support and help people again create and predict their future. And it's so funny. I was going through my little calendar here, and it basically says, and I'm going to use this now, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And that was by Abraham Lincoln, of course, our 16th US president. So that is our new quote that we're going to be using every time.
I do like that very much. Yeah, that's spot on. That's forward looking.
Yep. It is forward looking. Yep. And so, here's to us creating and being able to predict our future. There we
Happy
go.
To be on board for it.
Yeah, same here. All right. Well, you guys have a great day. And if you need any support in your, let's say, non-traditional accounting, we want to work with you in client advisory services and really help you build your business and create and predict your future. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.